Joined now here on GCR by a man who was in Baltimore to check out the Ravens win over the Commanders on Sunday. He is with Underdog Fantasy. He is with Bleacher Report. He is James Palmer, and he is with us now here on GCR. James, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It's great to chat with you, man. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes for us.
Oh, for sure. I picked this game, Glenn. Like, I can go to any game I want each week.
I wanted to talk to you about
where
this.
Where do you want to go?
Okay, so
and I said, I got to be at this one.
I did not know. All right, let's pull the curtain back for people that don't realize that. I acknowledge that I pre-tape interviews. It's not like anybody's going to be surprised by this. I didn't realize that was what the gig allowed now. That you every week get to pick where you want to be, which I think is tremendous. And what was it about? Was it the Lamar Jaden thing? Was it the geography thing? Like, what made this be the game that you said, I want to be there on Sunday?
I think it's all that. I think the Ravens are, in my opinion, shaping into form as being a Super Bowl front runner, in my opinion. I wanted that confirmed with my own eyes. I wanted to see Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry play together with my own eyes. I really, I'll be honest, wanted to see Jaden Daniels. I've talked to enough people in Washington about what's going on with him, and I wanted to see it. And the geography part, to me, let's just say this game should happen every year. Like, I know, like, the way alignment works, I know the way the conferences work, but the atmosphere was great. The number of, just jerseys from both sides and the geography of it, it made a great atmosphere that I wish we weren't waiting, every 4 years for this type of game?
I mentioned this briefly yesterday, but my buddy Dave Preston from WTOP, who's been covering football for a long time, suggested that that's what the 17th game should be every year. That, like, the 17th game should be a regional rivalry game. And I get that it doesn't clean up perfectly for everyone. Like, you could do Eagles-Steelers every year, and there would be something there. You could do Jets-Giants.
Cowboys-Texans.
Right. In some places, it cleans up really nicely. There's a logical. It's not perfect for everyone, but the thought makes an amount of sense, right? That, like, you're doing this 17th game every year. Why not try to make this, like, create some sort of rivalry thing that doesn't exist outside of divisional play in the NFL?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just being there for that atmosphere, and I went to a big-time school. Like, I went to Ohio State. I know what college rivalries are like. I hate that team up north.
Yep.
And it's fun, and it's great for both sides. And it's actually, and I'll be honest, we've lost a few to that team up north recently. But we went on a streak where we were in total dominance for a decade.
Yep.
When both teams are really good, it's even more fun. I know it's more stressful for the fans, but think about this with Jaden Daniels now, and I mean, he is the truth, no lie. I mean, it is unbelievable what he's done so quickly. I mean, to have these two quarterbacks that you could essentially see square off every year, the level of play always makes these rivalry things more fun. And you could see that with the direction that Washington's headed.
So what stood out to me, I am starting to get, like, last year Houston vibes from Washington. There is no debate about the quarterback, right? Like, that throw he made to Terry McLaurin in the end zone is chef's kiss. And that's a guy who, like, if you had a warranted criticism, it would be he doesn't throw the ball to his left. Well, like, the best throw that we made him make all day happened to be to his left. He is unbelievably legitimate. Will he be Lamar Jackson? I have no idea, because that's a two-time MVP that we're talking about who still might be ascending somehow in his football career, which is a bonkers thing to say. But I think that yesterday was a reminder of they've got the quarterback check. They're just not quite at the same level as a football team as the Baltimore Ravens are. And we'll see what they do next, the ownership, the leadership of that organization. But they've got the foundation figured out, and that is by far the most important thing.
It really is. And you mentioned ownership, and that I think should be talked about, I think, a little bit more. Josh Harris and this group own other franchises. This isn't new ownership group, right? Maybe new ownership group to the NFL, but when you own a basketball team, you own a hockey team, you know how to own a franchise. You know the things that you can do to put things in the right place. everybody wants to find the quarterback, and everybody wants to make sure that that puts them in the right direction. I liked your comparison to Houston, in all honesty, because that happened way quicker than we thought.
Yep.
And talk about two organizations in Houston and in Washington that were not even just in disarray on the field over the last couple of years, but behind the scenes. Well, what was going on in the building, right? What was happening in the facility? It was just not a good place to be. It was a toxic environment in both buildings. And how quickly did Houston do it? In 1 year, essentially, with DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud. And now you're seeing a grown-up, as a lot of people refer, in Dan Quinn, that's now in the building to run things, and you find Jaden Daniels. And so it is a good comp because they're doing things really, really quickly. They're not where the Ravens are in terms of their roster. We know there's holes on that roster for sure. But they're the best team in their division right now. And I don't think there's an argument to be made. They're the best team in the NFC East.
Yeah,
and that happened very quickly. And they got a lot of room. Like, don't be surprised if they make a move before the trade deadline because they got some cap space. And if they're still on this trajectory and they're leading the division and that's, like, in their sights, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to improve this roster pretty quickly here with a move or two.
Makes a lot of sense. He's James Palmer. He's with us here on GCR. James, that's for them. Obviously, not our concern here in Baltimore. In Baltimore,
sure.
Life is good again after a weird. We say it was 2 weeks to start the season. It was really 1 week and one quarter against Dallas, right? Like, because the game against the Chiefs, you're going to lose a game every now and then. They lost by an inch, right? Like the game against the Chiefs. The Raiders thing.
A toe.
Yeah, a toe, exactly.
Yeah.
The Raiders thing was so disastrous that there were questions at that point, like, whoa, could this come apart? Well, they've responded obviously really well, and that's led with the thing that you brought up as part of the reason you wanted to be here. We all had this feeling during the offseason of, is it possible that Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in one backfield just might be completely indefensible? And here we are 6 weeks in, and the answer does appear to be like there is no good answer for how you handle having both of these guys. What do teams possibly do when both guys are clicking?
Yeah, I don't think they know that yet. And that's scary for the rest of the league. I don't think teams know. I mean, I was in that Commanders locker room talking to some people post-game, and this was said to me by a coach, was like, it's not really fair that Derrick Henry landed with Lamar Jackson. Like, that is the perception around the league right now. And to put this in perspective, right, the Ravens right now are averaging 146 more rushing yards per game than their opponents. They're not averaging 146 yards rushing. They're averaging 146 yards per game more than their opponent. It's the biggest discrepancy the league has ever seen. You know, they're averaging over 205 and they're giving up 59. Like that is astounding. We've never seen a number like that in this league. And I thought they'd ease in with Derrick Henry. I mean, that was kind of part of, my thinking was, and I wasn't alone in this around the league of, John Harbaugh's going to say, you know what, you're here to wear teams down in late November, December, and January.
Yep.
We're going to, kind of limit some of your carries in the beginning of the season. We're going to kind of, ease you into this. We know you get better as the year goes, but still you're an older running back. Let's do this. I think that changed after 0-2.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, you know what? I think we got to get moving here. And it has been astounding what he's been able to do. And Lamar has played off of it brilliantly. I mean, you watch that game on Sunday, and I'm sitting there in the press box. Not as great as it used to be. Let's be honest. It was arguably the best press box.
There's no debate about that.
It was one of my favorites. And the last time I was in the stadium was for the AFC Championship game. Sorry.
We don't like that. We don't talk about that one.
Yeah, but it was a new press box, but it also was a little more towards the end zone.
Yep.
So you're getting to see these alignments a little differently. And it's just like 7 in the box, 8 in the box, single high safety, 7 in the box, 8 in the box, single high safety. We have to play this way to stop Derrick Henry. And Zay Flowers just runs free, and Lamar throws for well over 300 yards again. And you're just seeing the bind that defenses are being put in because you could just go to the line of scrimmage and see how many guys are in the box and play off of it. And if they don't load the box, then you hand it off to Derrick Henry. He does what he does. And so it's been really, really impressive what they've done together. And I think it's also improved the entire passing game when teams have to worry about, Derrick Henry. And so it's been as good as it can get over the last couple of weeks. And I mean, there is an argument. Is this the best offense in football right now?
Statistically, it is that Patrick Mahomes is still breathing, and that's just the reality of the
Yeah.
circumstances. And James, I feel like that's like going into the year before the little 0-2 hiccup. The singular question about this team was, can this finally be the team that gets over the Chiefs hump in the playoffs? That was the only thing.
Mm-hmm.
We were almost expecting the regular season to be boring, right? Like it was going to be a slog
You're just waiting for
to
it.
get to the part that mattered. And then it got a little more adventurous. But now that things have settled down, I feel like we return to that question, which is, can this combination, if you can keep them healthy, because obviously it always starts there, if you can keep Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson healthy and clicking like this, can this be the type of unique combination that can beat a really good Chiefs defense and take down that group finally when the games matter in the postseason?
Yeah, I think that's what we're all waiting for. And it's I was hearing this buzz at the stadium that was essentially, I kind of wish we could play the Chiefs now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's kind of the sentiment around the Ravens. My understanding is, that game happens to open the season, and we don't really know exactly what we are as an offense.
The offensive line was not near. You can already see how much the O-line has grown together in the last 6 weeks. Like you give that unit that
100%.
Yep.
Yeah, and as well as defensively. Like, let's talk about it. Like, you got a guy who hasn't called plays on defense before. Like that's who's stepping in to run your defense. And this is week 1 against Patrick Mahomes. Like, and I do think you got to go back and look at the way Mike started when he took over running that defense, and it wasn't phenomenal right out of the gate. And there were a lot of question marks for the first 6-7 games in his first year. And it takes a minute to really get that feel for your personnel and what you want to do. And yeah, I think there's a lot of people in Baltimore right now that are going, specifically in that organization, I wish we could play the Chiefs right now as opposed to the opener, because we're starting to figure out who we are. And that's what happens in this league. There's always so much turnover, right, with coordinators and coaches and personnel. And 80% of a roster usually in every single building is concerned they're not going to be back there the next year. Like, that's how much turnover is in the league. And usually most teams go, okay, they break it into quarters, and the first 4 games are we figure out who we are. The next 4 games, we drive home exactly that identity to our locker room. And the rest 8 games, it used to be 9 now, you go out there and you prove that. And I think the Ravens kind of now are in that spot going, this is who we are. We know who we are. We figured it out, and that's where we're at. And now we do think we have a formula that can beat Patrick Mahomes and company. It's not the same team that we thought Kansas City was going to have, obviously, with the injuries that they've had. We know the defense is really good, but at the same time, if you keep Patrick Mahomes off the field like they have the ability to do, it might be a different story.
I think that's what the calculus was they were doing, and we just have to learn that once we get inevitably to what feels like that is going to be, again, as long as everybody stays healthy, how this all plays out. Let me cover a couple things. Concerns, because you brought up the defense, and statistically it's still not great, and like some of that, you get heavier into like DVOA, and you get more like opponent neutral, and it's not that the pass defense is a bad group, and the run defense, to your point about the difference, the run defense has been outstanding. The pass defense hasn't been great. How much of that to you is a concern versus, no, that's about right with a new coordinator and playing the gauntlet of quarterbacks that you played to start the season? That will correct itself as the year goes on.
I think there's still some concern, obviously. You want to be as talented as possible. Like, if they were going to make a move, I mentioned moves at the deadline. I think, everybody probably, with both teams that were playing yesterday, man, Davante Adams looked good with that roster. I think both teams would probably tell you, we might need somebody on the defensive side of the ball if we are going to make a move. I do think there is part of that. I think you lost, and I think this shouldn't go overlooked. But honestly, I don't think it should. You lost a really good secondary coach.
No question.
Like, you lost a really good secondary coach. And then that happens. Like, position coaches and their input around the league varies tremendously. I'll be honest. There are some that know the right guys, and they always have a job. And then there are some, like the one that used to be in town, that are extremely valuable and unbelievable at their job with their group. And so I do think you got to overcome that. I think you got to figure out like how much Marlon Humphrey has, and like how much he's battling. But can he move like he used to? There's a lot of people around the league that think maybe not. You still have one of the most dynamic playmakers in the secondary in Kyle Hamilton that, like, every team in the league probably wishes they had that type of player. I do think there's growth that can happen on this side of the ball. Like I mentioned, I just think it's happened. Like I mentioned, the beginning of the season compared to now, I just think it's happened and you figured it out on offense a lot quicker than you have on the defensive side of the ball.
And obviously that turnover you mentioned, Denard Wilson, who they lost, and of course Mike McDonald. They brought in Dean Pease and they got more sets of eyes, and I think they're acknowledging.
I think that was smart.
Yeah, I mean, why? I think the question would be, given everything you lost, maybe just the experience was something that you needed a little bit more of, and I think that they're acknowledging that. You bring up the trade deadline, and I ask this more generically, like to the extent the Ravens are willing to be aggressive and make trades. Like the Roquan Smith thing was aggressive a couple years ago. That was a heavy price to pay for a player that was not, at that time signed long term. Now they were able to get that done, and for the most part, that's worked out. He hasn't been quite as good this year as he had been for the 2 years before that, but that's a very high bar. He had been outstanding. We've seen that. Do you feel like, given Derrick Henry's here, given everything they've been through in playoffs past leading up to this point, that maybe they do need to be even a little bit more aggressive to say, hey, this year kind of does need to matter maybe a little bit more than typically just being the Ravens who always say, well, we want to be good every year.
That's a great analogy. And I'm in the camp, and there's some people in the league that obviously believe this way, and there's plenty of GMs that don't want to take the big swing because there's fear in the big swing. But I agree with you, because you could look at two teams right now, and they played against each other. This is a perfect example, and I didn't even know you were going to ask this question. Two teams played against each other on Sunday, in the Detroit Lions and the Dallas Cowboys. The Detroit Lions are in an absolute, epic window for a Super Bowl run right now. So close last year, felt like they got screwed. They lose Aiden. My point of this is they lose Aiden Hutchinson. Awful, just absolutely terrible. Arguably the best defensive player in football this year. They should be aggressive, right, to fill that need. Obviously, you're going to have to give up something, but if they want to go after, say, Max Crosby or Cam Jordan becomes available, and the Saints are sellers, or the Browns are sellers, and they look at their pass rushers, and they should go after it because their window is as big as it maybe can get right now. The team that they were playing against in the Dallas Cowboys, that roster is in disarray right now, and it wasn't 2-3 years ago they were probably considered one of the better rosters in all of football. And you go, well, our window with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb is going to be huge. Well, they're nowhere near that right now. And so it can happen in an instant to where that window shifts and your chances of a Super Bowl changes. And so if you're Baltimore right now, Derrick Henry's 30 years old. I don't think you have the longest window with this game-changing type of player that legitimately in your backfield is maybe the biggest threat to the MVP of your quarterback. That's astounding that they're playing that well.
Is that good?
So, go out and see if you can be aggressive. I really do think it's important. The Chiefs, right now, to my understanding, are kind of not sitting on their hands, but they're kind of seeing what's out there. But they don't want to be overly aggressive looking for a receiver and overpaying because they feel like they've drafted well. They feel like their Super Bowl window is really huge with Patrick Mahomes. But at the same time, if they don't and they come up short, maybe they'll be second-guessing it. So there is those couple schools of thought, but if you look around the league, like the examples I gave you with the Lions and the Cowboys, a window can change pretty quickly, and another team's in one right now where I would expect them to make a move because they know where they're at.
All right, let's make sure we get all the plugs in, right? The Underdog Show, the Bleacher Report.
That's what everybody should like the show. We got an Underdog. It's me and former Baltimore Ravens.
He's a popular man around these parts. He is a
really
very.
Is, man. How about when he was a band member the other week?
Did you
see
cool.
that?
That was really cool. That was really.
Yeah.
I look. It's we talk about Steve Smith is a career Panther who had a cup of coffee here and yet is treated here like he was a Raven for 15 years. That's how beloved he is in Baltimore.
Well, that's Steve for you, and man, he knows ball. I mean, I don't know if people know that Steve is such a student of the game, and I don't know anybody personally. And I've been covering this league for 15 years that knows the receiver position better and to evaluate talent there. So we have a blast, man. It's awesome. Yeah,
that's really cool. And then what else can we plug for you?
Oh, I don't know. We can. We're an insider for Bleacher Report, so we jump on there and we kind of talk about what's happening around the league every week on Wednesdays. I'll give you the goods about kind of my notebook from talking to people around the league and kind of figuring out what Well, it's kind of interesting storylines. We'll probably have some stuff Wednesday about the Ravens for sure, and about the Commanders, because that's where I was at. So I got some really good nuggets I'm saving for Wednesday about both those teams.
At James Palmer TV is where you follow him. James, really appreciate it, man. Thank you for doing this. Hopefully we see you back here in Baltimore before too long, and would love to chat again then.
If I pick my games, which I get to do, I think it's almost a certainty.